All right, well, let's get to the last film of the franchise so far, which is Bill and Ted Face the Music. This one came out in 2020, directed by Dean Parisot, stars Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter, Kristen Schaal, Samara Weaving, Bridget Lundy Payne, William Sadler, Kid Cudi, Holland Taylor, Dave Grohl, a few others. And the synopsis is once told they'd save the universe during a time traveling adventure, two would be rockers from San Dimas, California find themselves as middle aged dads still trying to crank out a hit song and fulfill their destiny. I did not see this one until I saw Bogus Journey. When this one came out, I was not thinking about Bill and Ted at all. I was like, I don't care about this. I vaguely remember the first one. I'm not going to watch it. Just looked over it completely. And then over the last couple of years, I've come to love Keanu Reeves. And so I've been seeking out every movie that he's done. And then going back and watching the first two, I was really excited to watch this one for the first time. I think if I had to pick, this is my least favorite. I still enjoy the movie. It is slightly lesser than Bogus Journey. Similar to, it made me think of a little bit the fifth and final Indiana Jones that came out this past year, where it's showing you a character who you knew originally as being very young, 20s, 30s, teens, and then them now being old, and you seeing that actor actually being old, not them recast, not them wearing makeup, blah, blah, blah. It's actually them in the era that they're in now. So being in their 50s, 60s, 70s, blah, blah, blah. So I really like that idea in this. I think in Indiana Jones, they do that a lot better. But for what it is, this movie, like the first two, it is nice to see, even though I don't love this movie, I'm glad that it exists. Because seeing Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter now, I think they're both in their 50s, I'm pretty sure, at least around that age. Seeing them be Bill and Ted in their 50s is comical on its own right. And I know that's what something Keanu Reeves was saying that he thought was so genius, where it's you're seeing these guys who somehow they made it to 50 and they're still the same kind of people, but now they're dads. And so I really think that idea is very clever and very interesting. I think they could have done more with that in terms of the comedy, because I think this is the least funny of the three. But Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter are still perfect together, chemistry wise, and then by themselves, they're great. Seeing, especially knowing so much about Keanu Reeves's work overall and seeing him in these big franchises like Matrix and John Wick and all these other serious dramas, it is so funny and enjoyable to see him in this very silly sci-fi comedy. And so again, that on its own right is enjoyable to me, maybe not to everybody. And it is one that you really have to see the first two, I think, to get much out of it. I think if I'd watched this before watching the others, I would have been a little, not only lost, but a little underwhelmed in comparison to how I feel about it now. I think Samara Weaving and Bridget Lundy Payne, I don't think I've seen her in anything. I really like Samara Weaving across the board. I always enjoy her in everything that I've seen her in. I like the idea of them somewhat passing the torch to the daughters, and I thought that they were pretty good together as well. I'm hoping, nothing against them, but I'm hoping that the fourth film, if that does come true, it still focuses on Bill and Ted. Because if you want to do a spinoff movie with the two daughters or a TV show or whatever, do that. I'm all up for it. I'd watch it. But if you're going to do Bill and Ted 4, make sure it's about Bill and Ted. You know, I don't want them to be like cameos and then it's about the daughter's journey, probably calling back to what Bill and Ted went through in the first three movies or something. I don't want that at all. And so I'm hoping I'm wrong completely that that's the idea that they have. I really hope it's Bill and Ted teaming up maybe again with the daughters and them all going off as a quartet to do some crazy adventure. I'm totally cool with that. But I'm really hoping that the sequel stays true to the first three, because without Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter in those lead roles, I'm not that interested if it was just them in minor roles comparison to the daughters. But I still really like everyone in the movie. Kristen Schaal is good. Similar to the first two films, it does show this appreciation and love of music creation and musical history, you know, going back to Jimi Hendrix and Louis Armstrong, Mozart. I think all that stuff is so nice to have in a film like this, where it's clearly the box office is not a good showcase, but being a movie now that's showing the foundations of music, the roots of music through different cultures and groups, I think that is really nice to have. And I really appreciate that, being someone who just loves music, but also, even if I didn't, I think that's really good to have in a film like this. The effects overall, it's not a huge budget, but I think for what the budget is, the effects look pretty good. They're a lot more updated. And maybe in some ways that's even a hindrance, where I enjoy the 80s, 90s special effects comparison to this, where in this it's almost too clean and too polished. But not a big deal. I think overall the movie still looks pretty good. It's directed well. It's only about 90 minutes. It's not long, and that's nice to have in this day and age where everything is 2.5, 3 hours long. This is just breezy. You could watch all three of these movies in an evening, no problem. I thought the robot, played by Anthony Carrigan, I was at first I thought, oh god, I'm gonna hate this guy. He's gonna be so obnoxious. But and maybe some people do. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I actually really thought he was a funny character, and I thought that performance was very good. Some of the other supporting roles, like Kid Cudi showing up, that felt a little unnecessary. I mean, of all the people, I get his popularity, but felt maybe sometimes out of place. I really liked the actor who played Louis Armstrong, Jimi Hendrix, and so on and so forth. A great sequence is where they see themselves on their deathbeds. That's hilarious. And they're still doing the same guitar riffs and jokes and all that stuff. And then I think my favorite part of the movie is where they go to the mansion where Bill and Ted are, or like the future versions are, or whatever it might be. Sorry if I'm getting the logic wrong, but and they think they've written the best song and they're badass rock stars, and then later on you find out that's not true, and they're just these kind of washed up old guys. Where they see themselves as prison inmates is hilarious, and they're wearing those huge buff tattooed suits, or however it is they did that. I don't know. I think that was really funny. So there are some definite standout, funny, wacky, over the top moments that feel very reminiscent of the first two. So I think they did a good job of capturing that again. But there are times where the datedness doesn't always work. Sometimes the deliveries, sometimes the writing, maybe just the writing isn't as sharp as the first two are. I think that is true. Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter, they still inhabit those characters very well and slip back in pretty easily. I don't really have a problem with them, but overall, just the movie wasn't as funny as I was hoping it would be, considering what's come before it. Soundtrack is good, the music is good. The final sequence where they're putting on this song, I don't dislike the idea, and it's so ridiculous that I appreciate that about it. And visually, I thought it looked good, but probably the biggest thing of the whole movie was the pacing. I felt like the pacing was a little inconsistent, and I think that by the end, I was kind of ready for it to be over. I was just dragging a little bit, and maybe on a rewatch, I won't mind that as much. But I found that once they get out of the hell sequence, which I like that idea, and I like that they bring back death. I think that the third act drags a little bit for me, and I'm just, maybe I've seen it once too many times before. I don't know, but I didn't love that part of the movie, even though the central ideas are there and the music is pretty cool. I didn't love the pacing and flow of that final sequence, but love seeing them back in those roles at the age that they are. I really like, and I hope because of movies like this and Indiana Jones that they do that more with franchises, where you get to live actually more with those characters and see those actors grow up as those characters. I really like that idea, so I'm hoping they do more of that in the future with others. Still worth watching. If you haven't seen the first two, I would not watch this one first. I would wait until you watch the first two and see how you feel, because I think in some ways maybe they tried to make it accessible to everyone. I don't think that really worked, and maybe I'm completely wrong in that, but I think you really need to watch the first two to really have any kind of understanding. It's not really a reboot or anything like that. It is more a continuation. I'll definitely go back and rewatch every so often. I'll probably only watch it again when I watch the first two together. I think I'll always watch all three together rather than just watch one. They're so easy to put on and get through. So that one is a 3.5 out of 5.